Have you ever wondered what truly happens in the space between two people when the world outside has already written their story? Have you ever considered the invisible architecture of a relationship, the one built not of shared moments and whispered secrets, but of unspoken contracts and psychic energies? We see the surface, the visible narrative, in this case, the sophisticated older woman and the passionate younger man. Society looks on with a predictable mixture of curiosity and judgment, labeling it a defiance of time, a chase for fleeting youth, or a transaction of power and beauty. But the truth, the raw and unsettling truth that unfolds in the silent, sacred space between them, is a far more complex, a far more dangerous, and a far more revealing psychological drama. The real story is not about the years that separate them. It is not about the aesthetics of their union or the rebellion it represents. The real story, the one that can shatter them both, is about the one fatal flaw that respect cannot survive: the unconscious denial of self-worth. And the most terrifying part is that this flaw is often most deeply embedded in the most accomplished, the most intelligent, the most seemingly self-assured woman. This is not a story of romance. It is a story of alchemy. It is a crucible disguised as a courtship. The initial passion, the intoxicating dance of intellect and vitality, is merely the heat that brings the hidden elements to the surface. For the woman, his admiration is a potent elixir. She watches herself through his eyes and sees a reflection she thought she had lost, or perhaps never truly believed she possessed. He sees her not as a relic of a bygone era, but as a living library of wisdom, sensuality, and power. His youthful energy does not mock her experience. It worships it. And for a time, this is enough. For a time, this external validation feels like a homecoming. But it is a rented home, built on the unstable ground of another's perception. The core thesis that we must confront, the uncomfortable truth that underpins this entire dynamic, is that his respect is directly proportional to her own. His admiration is a fragile mirror, and the moment he detects the first hairline crack in her own self-regard, the entire image begins to fracture. It does not happen with a bang, but with a subtle, chilling shift in energy. It is a change in his gaze from awe to assessment, from reverence to a faint, almost imperceptible pity. This is the moment the romantic drama ends, and the brutal, internal reckoning begins. The renowned psychologist Carl Jung gave us a map for this perilous inner territory. He spoke of the shadow, that unconscious aspect of the personality which the conscious ego does not identify in itself. It is the repository of all that we deny, all that we repress, all that we deem unacceptable in ourselves. For this woman, the shadow is not some monstrous entity. It is a quiet, persistent whisper. It is the ghost of a younger girl who was taught that love is something to be earned, that her value is conditional, that she must be good, or brilliant, or beautiful, to be worthy of a space in someone else's life. She has spent decades building a magnificent fortress around this ghost. A fortress of career achievements, of intellectual prowess, of impeccable taste, of unassailable competence. She is the woman who can command a boardroom, dissect a philosophical argument, and host a flawless dinner party. But inside this fortress, in a small unlit room, the shadow waits. It is the part of her that still believes on some primordial level that she is not enough simply as she is. And the younger man, with his untarnished instincts and his unblunted perception, does not hear her words or see her accomplishments. He feels her frequency. He senses the subtle vibration of her core belief system. He is, in essence, a bloodhound for her authenticity, and he can smell the lie she is telling herself. Before him, her life was a testament to control and curated perfection. Her relationships were often with men who were her equals in age and status, men who understood the unspoken rules of a life lived on the surface. They admired the fortress because they, too, lived in one. The exchanges were balanced, predictable, and emotionally safe. Love was a negotiation, a merger of lifestyles and social calendars. She had learned to perform her role flawlessly, the role of the capable, independent woman who needed no one. But performance, by its very nature, is a confession of lack. It is an admission that the authentic self is insufficient for the stage. She loved, yes, but she loved until she lost herself, confusing the act of giving with the state of loving. She would overextend, over-explain, overcompensate, all under the guise of generosity, when in reality it was a frantic attempt to prove her worth, to secure her place, to pay the rent on the love she was receiving. She mistook attachment for intimacy and dependency for devotion. Each past relationship was a dress rehearsal for this final, devastating play, a reinforcement of the toxic script that said, "You must work for love, you must manage it, you must never, ever let them see the cracks in the facade." And so, with him, the old patterns emerge, draped in the new, intoxicating fabric of intergenerational desire. They are subtler now, more refined, but they are there. Watch her. Watch how she finds herself explaining why she chose a certain book, a particular film, a specific bottle of wine, as if her preference required a defense, a justification to be validated by his approval. Listen to the almost imperceptible upward inflection in her voice when she asks for his opinion, a question that sounds like a genuine inquiry but is, in fact, a plea for reassurance. Notice how, after a minor disagreement, she is the first to apologize, the first to smooth things over, taking responsibility for a disruption in the harmony that was not hers alone to bear. She is afraid of the silence, afraid of the space, because in that space, the whisper of her own unworthiness grows louder. She fills the space with her energy, her charm, her intellect, her nurturing, becoming the primary emotional caretaker of the relationship. She orchestrates their time together, plans their encounters, anticipates his needs, all with a masterful grace that looks like love but feels, to him, like a subtle form of control. A control born not of a desire to dominate, but of a terror of being abandoned. He doesn't consciously analyze this. He simply feels it. He feels the weight of her need, the invisible pressure of her unspoken fear, and his spirit, which was drawn to her freedom, begins to feel the first, faint touch of a cage. The turning point is never a single event. It is a death by 1,000 cuts, a slow erosion of a sacred trust. But there is always a moment of clarity, a moment the veil is ripped away, and she is forced to see the truth. Perhaps it happens during a conversation. She is sharing a vulnerability, a story from her past, expecting empathy, a connection. Instead, she sees in his eyes a flicker. It is not malice. It is not even cruelty. It is something far worse. It is a cool, detached analysis. He is no longer her lover, listening with an open heart. He has become a psychologist diagnosing her. Or perhaps it is a moment when he makes a decision that affects them both without consulting her, a casual assertion of his own autonomy that feels like a dismissal of her relevance. He says something like, "I figured you wouldn't mind." And in those 5 words, she hears the echo of her own self-erasure. She has made herself so accommodating, so flexible, so eager to please, that he has simply started to believe her needs are secondary. The most devastating moment, however, is often the quietest. It is when he pays her a compliment that sounds like a consolation prize. "You're so strong," he might say, after she has single-handedly navigated a crisis. But the subtext is clear. You are strong because you have to be. You are alone in your strength. He admires her resilience from a distance, no longer standing beside her as an equal partner in it. In that moment, the passion curdles into a kind of gentle, patronizing respect. The respect one gives to a monument, not to a living, breathing, equal partner. And the pain of this realization is breathtaking. It is a physical blow. But this pain, this unbearable agony, is the sacred wound. It is the catalyst. It is the mercy of a universe that is finally forcing her to stop looking at him and to start looking at herself. This is her descent, the beginning of the real work. The initial impulse is to fix it, to fix him, to talk it through, to explain herself better, to try harder, to love more fiercely, to prove to him that he is wrong, that she is worthy of his original adoration. She wants to rewind the tape to get back to the beginning. But the universe holds the door to the past shut. There is no going back. The only way out is through. She has to walk into the fire of her own making, The emotional chaos that ensues is not about the relationship anymore. It is the sound of her inner fortress crumbling. Every defense she has built, every intellectual argument, every worldly success, is rendered meaningless in the face of this one fundamental truth. She does not believe she is worthy of unconditional love. The journey inward is a brutal one. It means turning off the noise of the outside world, and for the first time, truly listening to the shadows whisper. Why do I need his approval so desperately? What old wound is he pressing on? When did I first learn that my love was a currency to be spent, rather than a state to be embodied? She must sit in the silence with these questions. She must allow the loneliness she has been running from her entire life to finally wash over her. She must face the ghosts of her father's indifference, of a mother's conditional affection, of every lover who confirmed her deepest fear. She must grieve not for the loss of him, but for the loss of herself, for all the years she spent performing and pretending. This is the grueling process of individuation. It is the act of separating her true self from the roles she has played and the beliefs she has inherited. It is messy, painful, and profoundly unglamorous. It is the slow, painstaking work of rebuilding her soul from the ground up on a new foundation, a foundation of radical self-acceptance. And then, one day, a shift occurs. It is not a sudden epiphany, but a quiet dawn that breaks after a long night. She emerges. She is the same woman, yet she is irrevocably different. The frantic energy is gone, replaced by a deep, resonant stillness. Her presence, which was once a tool to capture attention, is now simply a state of being. She has made a pact with herself, a sacred vow written not in words but in her very cells. She will never again betray herself for the comfort of another. She will never again shrink to make someone else feel large. She will never again accept crumbs of affection and call it a feast. She becomes a sovereign entity. Her inner world is now her true north, her unwavering source of validation. She is no longer a half, searching for a partner to complete her. She is a whole, inviting another whole to share a journey. This new self does not operate from a place of fear, but from a place of profound peace. Her solitude is no longer a threatening void but a cherished sanctuary, a space where she communes with her own soul and recharges her power. She has transmuted her pain into wisdom, her neediness into wholeness. She radiates a presence that speaks before she utters a single word. It is the quiet, unshakable confidence of a woman who has walked through her own personal hell and has come out the other side, not unscathed, but whole. This inner transformation manifests in a series of new behaviors, new ways of being in the world that are as revolutionary as they are simple. First, she stops explaining herself. Her choices, from the food she eats to the way she spends her time, are no longer up for debate or validation. They are expressions of her authentic self. A simple "because I want to" or "because it feels right to me" becomes a complete sentence. She has reclaimed the authority of her own preference. Second, she no longer seeks reassurance. The compulsive need to ask, "Do you love me?" or "Are we okay?" vanishes. She knows her own worth, and she can feel the truth of the connection, or its absence, in her own body. She trusts her intuition more than his words. Third, she sets boundaries, not as punitive walls to keep him out, but as a graceful and non-negotiable definition of her own sacred space. The boundaries are not threats. They are statements of fact. "I am not available for that kind of conversation," she might say, with no anger, only clarity. She is no longer a limitless resource to be endlessly drawn from. She is a well, and she decides who gets to drink from it. Fourth, and this is a profound shift, she learns to receive. The woman who was once a compulsive giver, using her generosity as a shield and a plea, now understands that true intimacy requires a balance of giving and taking. She allows herself to be cared for, to be helped, to be cherished, without feeling the immediate, anxious need to reciprocate and even the score. She understands that reciprocity is the natural breath of a healthy connection, not a frantic accounting of debts. Fifth, her silence becomes her superpower. Before, her silence was an anxious void she rushed to fill. Now, it is a statement. It is a presence. In a conversation, She is no longer afraid of the pauses. She allows them to exist, to deepen the communication. Her quietude is not a withdrawal of love. It is an invitation to a deeper level of connection, one that exists beyond the chatter of the ego. It makes people uncomfortable because it demands authenticity. You cannot engage in superficialities with a woman who is comfortable in the abyss of silence. But the sixth and most powerful transformation, the one that fundamentally alters the energetic physics of every relationship she will ever have, is this. She reclaims her power by becoming genuinely, peacefully, indifferent to whether he stays or goes. This is not a game. It is not an ultimatum or a manipulative tactic. It is the absolute, unshakable truth of her new reality. Her happiness, her wholeness, her sense of self are no longer contingent on his presence in her life. She would prefer for him to stay, perhaps, if he can meet her in this new place of wholeness and respect. But she does not need him to stay. She has finally, truly, become her own source. And this profound detachment born of self-love is the most magnetic force in the universe. It is the one thing that can command true respect. And how does he react to this transmuted woman? He is faced with a choice. He is confronted not with the accommodating, anxious-to-please woman he knew, but with a sovereign queen. His old tools of subtle manipulation and casual dismissal no longer work. When he senses her serene indifference, he may at first try to provoke her, to trigger the old patterns. He might say, "You've changed," as an accusation. He might become moody or distant, hoping to incite the old chase, the old dance of her pursuing him for reassurance. But she does not take the bait. She simply observes his behavior with a calm, almost compassionate detachment. She sees it for what it is, the confusion of a man who has lost his power over her emotional state. At this point, one of two things will happen. He will either be humbled and inspired by her transformation, recognizing that he must grow and evolve to meet her on this new, higher ground of mutual sovereignty, or his own ego and immaturity will be exposed, and he will retreat. He will seek out another woman whose cracks in her self-worth will allow him to feel powerful again. The outcome of the relationship, you see, ceases to be the point of the story. It is merely the epilogue. The true victory has already been won, inside her. She actively rejects the tired, simplistic narrative society tries to impose on her. The whispers of "she couldn't keep him," or "the age gap was too much," become meaningless noise. She does not see the relationship as a failure. She sees it with a quiet, almost ironic smile, as the most successful failure of her life. It was the catalyst that shattered her illusions and forced her into the sacred work of her own becoming. It was not a love story. It was an initiation. She walks away from the wreckage not as a victim, but as a graduate. She defies the world that still preaches that happily ever after only exists in pairs, the world that tells a woman of a certain age that she should be grateful for any attention she receives. Her gratitude is now directed inward, to the strength she never knew she had, to the pain that became her teacher, to the shadow that, once embraced, became her greatest ally. She has stopped looking for a savior and has become her own salvation. Her life is no longer a search for the right person, but a celebration of being the right person for herself. In the end, the fatal flaw was not a flaw at all. It was an invitation. It was the soul's clever, disguised summons for her to finally come home to herself. The love that may come next for her, whether it is a rekindled, transformed connection with the younger man or a new love with someone else entirely, will be of a completely different quality. It will not be a love of need, but a love of choice. It will not be a desperate grasp for validation, but a joyful sharing of two complete worlds. It will not be a relationship of a performer and an audience, or a patient and a doctor, but a meeting of two sovereigns, two equals, who choose to walk together for a time because their paths align, not because one is lost without the other. This is the ultimate reclamation of power. It is the understanding that the most profound and enduring love story a woman will ever experience is the one she writes with her own soul. The journey wasn't about him. It was never about him. It was about her, remembering her own divinity. If the story, this psychological map, resonates with a whisper of truth deep inside of you, pay attention. If you have ever felt that chilling, almost imperceptible shift when admiration begins to curdle into condescension, know that you are not imagining it. Maybe this message did not find you by accident. Perhaps it is a mirror, showing you a reflection of a dynamic you are living or have lived. Know that this moment of painful recognition is not an ending. It is an invitation from your own soul, a call to begin the sacred journey of reclaiming your own inner authority. It is the beginning of the end of begging for love, and the start of becoming the love you seek. Share this video with a woman who needs to hear this message, not as a judgment, but as an affirmation of her own strength and potential. Let this be a conversation that we continue. Let us know in the comments below, what is one way, however small, you have learned to reclaim your own inner authority? What boundary did you set? What explanation did you refuse to give? What moment of silence did you choose to hold? Your story matters. Your wisdom is a beacon for others. Like this video if it sparked something within you, a recognition or a resolution. And subscribe to continue this journey of awakening together. Do it not out of impulse, but out of choice. A conscious decision to let this message, and others like it, keep resonating in your life, long after the screen goes dark.